My name is Michael Harris, and for most of my life, I measured my worth in things that didn't make noise. Bills paid on time, doors locked at night, lights that turned on when people flipped the switch without ever wondering why. That's the kind of man I was. The kind people only notice when something stops working. I grew up in a house where work came first and feelings came later, if at all. My father was an electrician. Union job. Thick hands. Quiet temper. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened because he didn't waste words. He taught me two things early. Don't promise what you can't deliver, and never let another man fix your mistakes for you. I didn't understand then how rare that lesson was. By 16, I was riding along with him on weekends, holding flashlights in crawl spaces, learning how wires ran through walls you'd never see again. That's where I got used to being invisible. You do your job right, and no one thanks you. They just assume it's supposed to work. My younger brother, Jason, hated that kind of work. He wanted attention, noise, applause. He was good-looking, quick-talking, always had a plan that sounded better than it was. Teachers liked him. Girls liked him. My parents worried about him. They trusted me. That's how it always went. Jason needed help, and I was expected to provide it. Not because anyone said it out loud, because it was easier that way. When my father died, I was 29. Jason was 24 and already on his third fresh start. Our mother moved in with me. Jason took what he wanted from the house, tools, a television, our dad's old truck, promising he'd make something of it. I took responsibility for everything else. Funeral costs, insurance calls, paperwork that shows up when someone leaves the world quietly. Responsibility has a way of sticking to you once people learn you'll carry it. I stayed in my trade, worked my way up from field work into maintenance supervision for a commercial property company. Office buildings, warehouses, retail centers. Places where people show up, do their jobs, and leave without thinking about the systems keeping them safe. Electrical, fire alarms, backup generators. I knew every panel, every code update, every corner that could burn if someone cut one corner too many. Jason bounced. Sales, marketing, crypto, briefly, construction, management, without ever managing much of anything. Every few years, he'd call me late at night, voice tight, talking fast. Something had gone wrong. Something always went wrong. And every time, I'd help. Advice. A contact. A loan I never really expected back. I told myself I was protecting our mother. That if I didn't step in, she would. That was true at first. Then it became habit. When I married Susan, she knew exactly who I was. Stable. Predictable. Home by 6. Coffee at the same time every morning. She liked that. Said it made her feel safe. We had one daughter. Raised her the way my father raised me. Structure. Accountability. Show your work. Jason drifted in and out of our lives. Holidays. Birthdays. Always with a new story. Always with big plans just around the corner. Susan was polite to him, but distant. She saw things I didn't want to admit. That he didn't just lean on me. He stood on me. The first time my name was used without asking, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt small. Jason listed me as a reference for a business lease. I found out when the property manager called to confirm my role. Jason brushed it off. It's just a form, he said. They need someone legit. Legit. That word should have stopped me. Instead, I sighed and confirmed I knew him. After that, it happened more often. A utility account. A vendor contact. My phone ringing with people asking questions I didn't know how to answer. Each time, Jason apologized. Each time, I accepted it. Because nothing had broken yet. That's the lie people like me tell themselves. That nothing is wrong as long as the lights stay on. At work, I was trusted. Not liked, not admired. Trusted. There's a difference. I was the man they called when inspections failed, when alarms triggered without reason, when a building manager needed someone to say, "No, that's not safe," and mean it. I signed off on reports that protected people I'd never meet. I took that seriously. My name on paper meant something. At home, things were quieter. Susan worried I worked too much. I worried Jason didn't work enough. Our mother worried about everyone. Family dinners were polite, careful. Nobody raised their voice. We all avoided the same truth from different angles. The warning signs came in pieces. A bill sent to my address that wasn't mine. A call asking about a credit account I'd never opened. Jason laughing it off. Mail mix-up, he said. Don't stress. I told myself he was right. Stress was a luxury. I had systems to run. The last calm moment I remember was a Tuesday evening in late fall. I was walking a commercial property with a clipboard, checking emergency lighting before a storm. Everything worked. Battery backups kicked in like they were supposed to. I stood there in the hum of generators and thought, this is what control feels like. Quiet, reliable, earned. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Jason's name. I ignored it. I finished the checklist. When I finally listened to the voicemail, his voice was tight, too controlled. Mike, if anyone calls, just tell them you know. I'll explain later. That was it. No details. No apology. I stood in that empty hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and felt something shift. Not panic. Recognition. The sense you get when you realize you've been holding something together with your bare hands, and someone just leaned their full weight on it. I didn't call him back. Because for the first time, I understood something my father had tried to teach me years ago. When you keep the lights on long enough, people forget there's a switch. The first official call came on a Wednesday morning, the kind of morning that feels too ordinary to carry bad news. I was already at my desk, coffee going cold beside the keyboard, reviewing inspection logs from the night shift. Everything was green. No flags. No alerts. That should have calmed me. Instead, my chest felt tight, like my body already knew something my head hadn't caught up to yet. The phone rang. Office line. Not my cell. Michael Harris? Yes. This is Denise from Northline Property Management. I'm calling to verify your authorization on an electrical service contract for the East Ridge complex. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't understand the words. Because I understood them too well. I don't have a contract with East Ridge, I said finally. There was a pause. Papers shifting on the other end. Our records list you as supervising authority, she said. Your signature is on the work order. Something cold slid through my stomach. I haven't signed anything, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Could you come by this afternoon? She asked. It would be easier in person. Easier. That word again. I drove to East Ridge after lunch. It was one of those mid-level office parks that all look the same. Glass, brick, landscaping meant to look alive but never change. Denise met me in a small conference room and laid the paperwork out neatly, like it might behave if it stayed organized. There it was. My name. My title. A signature that looked close enough to fool someone who didn't know me. Jason had always been good at copying things. As kids, he used to forge our mother's handwriting on school notes. She'd laugh when she found out. At least he's clever, she'd say. I stared at the paper longer than I should have. That's not mine, I said. Denise nodded slowly. That's what I thought, she said. But once a name is on a document, we have to follow procedure. Procedure. I was surrounded by it, trained by it, and now trapped inside it. She explained what had already happened. Jason's company had been contracted to handle after-hours electrical maintenance. There had been an incident, a temporary overload. No injuries, but enough damage to trigger an insurance review. When the insurer asked for supervisory confirmation, my name surfaced. Because Jason had put it there. I drove back to my office in silence. No radio, no calls, just the hum of the engine and the feeling that something I'd spent decades building was sliding out of my hands one form at a time. At work, my manager asked me into his office before I could even sit down. He didn't accuse. He never did. He closed the door and said, Mike, I need you to tell me if there's anything I should know before someone else does. That sentence hit harder than any raised voice. I told him the truth. About Jason. About the forged signature. About the call. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and sighed. We'll support you, he said. But you need to understand something. If this escalates, compliance will get involved. And when compliance gets involved, intent matters. Intent. That word again. That evening, I went home and pulled out every document I'd ever shared with Jason. Old emails, scanned IDs, utility forms, anything that had my name on it. It was more than I expected. Each item felt harmless on its own. Together, they told a different story. A man who'd given away access piece by piece, convincing himself it was trust. Jason called that night. I let it ring. He texted, Did anyone contact you? I didn't respond. By Friday, the insurance company called. Then legal. Then compliance from my own company. Everyone polite. Everyone careful. Everyone taking notes. The compliance officer asked me directly, Did you knowingly allow your name to be used to authorize work you did not supervise? No, I said. Did you benefit financially? No. Did you attempt to correct the record once you became aware? Yes. Each answer felt like placing a brick between myself and a fire. Jason's messages shifted tone. The joke stopped. The confidence drained out of his words. They're talking about liability. Just tell them you approved it. You know I wouldn't screw you over. That last one made me laugh out loud. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. Jason didn't think he'd screwed me over. In his mind, he'd borrowed something that belonged to me and assumed I wouldn't need it. On Monday morning, HR called me in again. This time compliance was present. A woman I'd never met sat across the table with a legal pad and a voice that didn't soften words. We need to formally separate you from any unauthorized documentation, she said. That means written statements, timelines, handwriting samples. I nodded. This was my language. Documentation didn't scare me. Silence did. I spent the next 3 hours writing. Dates, times, context, every interaction I could remember. Not emotionally. Precisely. When I finished, my hand ached. The compliance officer read everything, then said, "Thank you. This helps protect you." Protect. No one had used that word with me in years. Jason showed up at my house that night. No call. No warning. He stood on the porch, hands in his jacket, eyes sharp with panic. "You're letting them turn this into a thing," he said. "It already is a thing," I replied. "You could stop it," he insisted. "You always stop it." That sentence hung between us. "No," I said quietly. "I used to." He stared at me like he didn't recognize the man standing in front of him. "You're choosing paperwork over family," he said. I shook my head. "I'm choosing reality over denial." He left angry. I stayed awake. The hearing notice arrived the following week. Not dramatic, just official. It listed my name, Jason's company, and the incident in neutral language that somehow made it worse. I sat at my kitchen table with the letter and realized something that made my chest tighten. This wasn't about whether Jason would get in trouble. This was about whether I would lose everything I protected my entire life because I'd been too careful to draw a line. And for the first time, I understood that keeping the lights on for everyone else had left me standing in the dark. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The unfamiliar kind. The kind you get when your phone stops buzzing and you don't know whether to feel relieved or exposed. For years, silence meant danger. It meant something was about to break, and no one had told me yet. Now it meant something else. It meant the system had taken over. And for the first time, it wasn't asking me to fix anything. The hearing didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a plain building with beige walls and a conference table that had seen too many arguments to remember any of them. There was no jury, no dramatic speeches, just forms, folders, and people who spoke carefully because their words carried weight. Jason sat across from me, shoulders tight, jaw locked. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He stared at the table like it might offer him a way out if he focused hard enough. When they asked him if he had permission to use my name, he hesitated. That hesitation did more damage than any confession. "I thought he'd be okay with it," Jason said finally. The compliance officer didn't raise her voice. She didn't frown. She just wrote something down. "That's not authorization," she said. That was it. No argument. No debate. One sentence, and years of assumptions collapsed. They went through the documents one by one. Work orders, emails, signatures, timelines. Each item was laid out neatly, like evidence of a crime no one wanted to call a crime until they had no choice. When my turn came, I spoke plainly. No speeches. No emotion. "That signature isn't mine," I said. "I didn't supervise that work. I didn't give permission." Each sentence felt like closing a door I should have closed years ago. Jason finally looked up at me then. His eyes weren't angry. They were searching, like he was still waiting for me to rescue him. For a moment, I felt the old instinct rise. The reflex to smooth things over. To offer something, anything, that would make this end faster. But I didn't move. Because I understood something now that I hadn't before. Every time I saved him, I taught him that I would. The decision came quietly. The claim was ruled unauthorized. Liability was removed from my name. Jason's company was flagged. Contracts were suspended pending review. No shouting. No threats. Just consequences written in careful language. When it was over, people stood up and gathered their papers. Chairs scraped softly against the floor. Someone said, "Thank you for your time." As if time were all that had been spent. Jason walked out without speaking to me. I stayed behind for a moment, signing the last form. When I stepped outside, the The air felt sharper, colder. Honest. Like winter without apology. At work, things changed in small ways. My manager stopped checking in so often. Compliance closed my case. A brief email confirmed my record was clear. No damage. No warnings. My name, officially, belonged only to me again. That mattered more than I expected. Jason's fallout took longer. It always does. Businesses don't collapse overnight. They erode. A contract not renewed. A supplier demanding payment up front. Insurance premiums rising. People stop calling back. The kind of damage that doesn't look dramatic but never really heals. I heard about it through our mother at first. Then through mutual acquaintances. Then not at all. Jason called me once, late at night. His voice sounded smaller. "They're done with me," he said. I didn't ask who. "They say I can't fix this." I let the silence sit between us. "No," I said eventually. "You can't." He waited. I could almost hear him bracing for the part where I stepped in. "I won't," I added. He hung up without saying goodbye. The hardest part wasn't losing my brother. It was losing the role I'd built my identity around. The man who kept things running. The man people leaned on. Without that, I had space I didn't know how to fill. For a while, I filled it with nothing. I came home on time. I ate dinner without distraction. I sat in rooms without listening for the next problem. It felt wrong at first. Like neglect. Like laziness. Then it started to feel like rest. Susan noticed the change before I did. "You're different," she said one evening as we cleared the table. "I stopped fixing things that weren't mine," I replied. She nodded slowly. "It suits you." The holidays came quietly that year. Jason didn't come. No one mentioned it. My daughter asked once where her uncle was. I told her the truth, without bitterness. "Sometimes adults make choices that change how close they can be," I said. She accepted it faster than I had. On a cold night in January, I stood alone in one of the buildings I managed, checking emergency lighting. The generators kicked on smoothly. The lights stayed bright. Everything worked. I realized something then. The lights had never needed me to sacrifice myself to stay on. They needed structure. Limits. Clear lines. So did people. I went home and laid my keys on the table. My keys. My house. My name. Nothing borrowed. Nothing shared. Nothing assumed. Jason never asked me for help again. And for the first time in my life, that felt like success. Not revenge. Not victory. Just fairness. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to keep the lights on for everyone else. It's to finally turn the switch back toward yourself.